Welcome back to the Drive Home Reviews podcast, where I review the movies that I have just seen as I am driving home from the theater. I know that I must have stated this before, and I hate to repeat myself, but at the same time, I feel context is needed. A couple years back, when The Predator came out, does anybody remember that one, where at the end they got the Iron Man armor so they could go fight the Predators on their own turf? You remember that? No, of course you don't, because it was a piece of shit. And even if you paid money to see it, odds are the trauma centers of your brain have worked tirelessly to repress all of those memories. But I remember reviewing that film, and at that time I made the statement that the Predator series was dead. It was time to let it go. It was time to just move on, admit that the Predator was a product of its time. You were never going to recreate the same magic as the original, and it was time to just let it go. And I sometimes wonder, I flatter myself, clearly, if director Dan Trachtenberg somehow heard that and in an effort to spite me said to himself, "Oh yeah?" Because it seems like ever since he has been working tirelessly to prove me wrong, and he has at every possible turn. And the way that he's done this has been deceptively simple, to the point where you wonder why nobody thought of it before. And the way he's done this is by not trying to recreate the original, as so many of the other entries in this, specifically Predators and The Predator, I love these very original naming concepts, where they were just trying to recapture the magic of the first one. And I would say even the second one to a certain extent. I will still stand by Predator 2. And they just couldn't get the results because nothing could capture that moment. So Dan Trachtenberg apparently decided that the best way to move the story forward was to actually move the story forward and do things with the property that nobody else had done. So, of course, we start with Prey. In my opinion, and I know that people will disagree with me vehemently about this, but in my opinion, the best solid, pure movie of the entire series, which does the first film, but does it in a new and interesting way from a different perspective and point of view. So it's very fresh, very original. Then earlier this year, the Hulu Direct Predator Killer of Killers, which was the first animated Predator project, which meant you could do a lot more with it. You could go and visit different time periods, and also giving you that first real glimpse of the Predator culture in canon. This was the very first time that we actually heard that the Predators had a language. And we actually get to see aspects of their culture. Because they must have a culture. If they're a species that has developed interstellar flight, they must have a culture of some kind. That just stands to reason. And I stress in canon because I know that in the intervening 20, 30 years, there have been books and video games and role-playing games and comics that have all attempted to expand the Predator mythos. But, these comics are the same place where he fought Batman, Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Archie. So I don't know how much canon that actually is. So in this film, Dan Trachtenberg is going one step further and once again going where no predator has gone before. And for the first time ever, we actually have a predator as our main character, which is a concept so simple you wonder why they've never done it before. And I mean, I think I know because, you know, trying to have multiple costumes and multiple characters and, you know, different planets and all that costs a lot of money. You know, that's not cheap to reproduce. So I can see why it kind of took them a while. But yeah, for the first time ever, our predator is not the creepy thing lurking in the shadows. It's actually our protagonist. It has a character. It has a name. I'm pretty sure this is the first time a predator has had a name. And we get a look at the family structure. We get a look at the societal structure. And I have to say, as a fan of the series, that I will say it took a little time to get into it. I will admit that. And I have a feeling that this movie is going to be fairly divisive amongst fans. I think you're going to get ones who treat this like modern MCU and will now call it the worst thing that ever happened to the Predator franchise, blah, 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 blah. And I will say to those people the same thing I say to the people who now badmouth everything the MCU does. I will say, shut up, it's still good. But I can understand where some people are going to have a hard time getting into it. For decades, the Predator has been this mythic creature, this thing that we only kind of get glimpses of their society or their culture from the little clues that we pick up. And when you go that long, people tend to establish canon in their head. Again, usually informed by outside things like, you know, expanded universe. This is the same issues that the Disney sequel Star Wars films ran into, is people had spent so long dreaming about the final fate of all their favorite characters. You had an entire universe of novels and comics with a maintained continuity of their own, that when someone else comes along and says, no, none of that actually happened, you know, people get pissed. Plus, in this one, you have to come to terms with the Predator having a wacky sidekick and a cute, adorable animal friend, which does feel a little off-brand. But what I dig about Dan Trachtenberg and his take on this property is every time you think that, it's like if you just give it time, you see, no, it actually is exactly on brand, and it's all leading towards something larger. So let's back up. Let's talk about the plot of this one. So as I said, this is the first Predator film where the Predator itself is our main character. So we're dealing with a young Predator named Deck, who is the runt of his litter, the runt of his clan, and in this society, weakness and perceived weakness has to be culled and eliminated. And his father, whom he has always been trying to please but obviously can't, orders his brother to kill him. His brother goes against this and sends Dak on his first ritual hunt that's kind of his rite of passage. And Dak has chosen to go to the most deadly planet in all the universe, where it's like Hogwarts, this planet. Everything there is trying to kill you. So Dak is desperate to hunt this unkillable creature as his first trophy, bring it back to prove his worth and to get revenge on his father for killing his brother. So along the way, he picks up an artificial life form. I like this nice crossing of the alien and predator mythos, as he finds a Weyland-Yutani android, like the kind Lance Hendrickson was in Aliens. This one played by Ellie Fanning, who is missing her legs, and she becomes his guide and his, wacky sidekick as they journey to find the rest of her people, this entire synth crew, which has been sent by Weyland-Yutani for purely humanitarian and environmentally friendly purposes, because Weyland-Yutani is nothing but the kindest, most loveliest company that ever there was. And he'd hopefully kill this unkillable beast. And along the way, of course, they bond, they share ideas, they pick up a cute little monkey animal friend, and things kind of progress from there. But that's our main plot. And just by giving it that, by that basic description, it does sound like none of this should work, right? It does feel like none of this should actually hang together and culminate into some kind of cohesive whole that's still entertaining and deserves that kind of place within the Predator mythos. Well, you're wrong, because it actually all comes together really well. I think that it's one of those magic elixirs, one of those combinations of characters that just happen to click really well. You've got Deck, who is played by, I'm going to mispronounce this gentleman's name. It is quite a name, so I deeply apologize for butchering it, but I'm doing my best. By Demetrius Shuster-Kanlamateji. I'm just going to call him Demetrius from here on out. I deeply apologize, sir, for the butchering of your name. So he plays Deck, our main predator, through a fascinating combination of both practical and CGI effects. His suit and the head and everything is practical, but the face they do with CGI, mainly because this is the first time that a predator has to emote and has to express more emotion than just, I'm going to kill that thing or I'm going to roar. So they use the CGI to kind of get some of the subtleties of the facial acting in there. So he's our stern, serious, the guy who is clearly not just a physical outcast from his clan, but also kind of an ideological one, in that they stress that, I guess, in this culture. First of all, they also give the predator species a name, the Utah. So it's the first time we've actually heard what the species is actually called. But anyway, they stress that in this culture, you hunt alone, emotion is weakness, connection is weakness, and he recites all this because it's what he's been taught, and he's trying to live up to those ideals. But you can also see that he is mourning the loss of his brother. He feels anger, and as the story goes on, he forms a connection, despite his best efforts, with the traveling companions. Ellie Fanning, who I did not realize this was at first. And it's funny because I just a few days ago watched the episode of House she was in when she was a little girl. It's amazing how quickly time goes by. She is phenomenal. She is funny, but not like over the top funny, not so that it makes light of the situation. It's not turning the movie into a comedy, but she offers a more lighthearted view of everything because she's an android and can't die. So the fear of death and the fear of being disemboweled by the creatures or the predator itself is non-existent. And as such, she can have kind of a lighter take on everything. And that lighter personality bouncing off of Dek and the seriousness and the very Klingon honor and duty and this, that, and the other thing that he's trying to embody. It's a buddy film. Who would have thought you would have seen a Predator buddy film? The last time we saw that was Alien versus Predator, the first one, where he and the one archaeologist become buddies. You know, you don't see that often, but this one works well because, again, in this one the characters can communicate. Dek always speaks the Predator language, and Ellie uses the universal translator, and so they can actually connect and form a bond. Again, it's bizarre to say, but we get a character and a character arc from the Predator. Which, did you ever think you'd actually see that? And it doesn't make it less of a badass. It doesn't make it less capable. It doesn't make the action scenes less exciting or the brutality of it somehow muted. It adds to it. It's kind of like the first time they ever made Godzilla the hero instead of just the threat. And they realize how much people have been wanting to cheer for Godzilla, even though in previous movies he was always the threat, the bad guy, for lack of terminology. What I also love is this, not only does Dek kind of gain a better understanding and become his own Predator, for lack of, again, better terminology, I like that they still keep certain elements of the Predator mythos and the Predator formula intact. Like, one of the big things in the first film is that when Dutch realizes that he can't fight the Predator just head on, 80s muscle man, shoot your gun, and that's going to get it. You have to abandon that and go primal, basically. And that's the same thing that works in Prey, is that the more technologically advanced society, the French hunters, are no match for it. But Amber Midthunder, someone who is more familiar with the environment and knows the world and can get down and get, basic with it, she can take it out. And that's kind of the same thing that happens here, is that it's very interesting to say this film has kind of an odd environmental message. I wouldn't say that that's a purposeful theme, but it is a theme going on in there where throughout the big chunk of the film, Dek is fighting against the environment. And again, this is an environment where everything is attempting to kill you. But when we get to the climax and he has to go rescue Ellie Fanning from the bad guys, who I won't give away because that's more complex than I really feel like getting into, he actually has to go primal. They're the more technologically advanced society. So he has to go down and take the lessons he's learned from the environment and use the environment and the other creatures around it to defeat them. So it's still in keeping with those thematic beats of the original, and again, doing it in a new and fun and interesting way, which is what Dan Trachtenberg has mastered when it comes to this particular series. I'm going to be honest, I don't really know what else to say about this. It's a really clever take on the material. And all of the other things about the Predator films are there. I think the Predator movies have migrated from being horror films like they were in like the first two to straight up action adventure. I think that's kind of what you can classify them as now, sci-fi action adventure. And this one, the action is really, really fun, and they do a lot of different things. There's Predator versus Predator. There's Predator versus any number of giant monsters, of plants, of tree creatures, of huge beasts. They're very creative with the different species, and very creative with the planet as a whole. You know, you can see they just kind of went through and went, okay, what is the most deadly shit we can come up with? And they did. I don't know if they could say that the environment makes a whole lot of sense from an evolutionary standpoint, but that's not why you're here. So, but yeah, the variation of the action film, and then of course, the climax where it's the famed basics versus technology, the same thing that they've done in Return of the Jedi, in those god-awful Avatar movies, you know. But it's that premise of the world itself versus the people who seemingly can dominate it, but actually can't. I also like that they show that Deck evolves not just as a character, but as a fighter. He learns to use his environment, not just the one that he's in, but all of them. It's something his brother was trying to teach him at the top of the film. And we see that he has become something really powerful. I guess the only thing I'll say about this is I wonder sometimes, does Dan Trachtenberg have a long-term plan in place for these movies? I'm curious now. We live in the age of the MCU. So when you get post-credit sequences, which these movies have not had post-credit sequence, but they have kind of, they do have after the main action sequences. Like Prey had the bit in the credits where they're showing like the cave painting murals, and then you see the ships coming back towards the village right before the screen goes black. In Killer of Killers, you have not just the main ship flying away and the surviving prey, you know, darting off, but all the ships chasing after them. And then we get that second one where we see all of our protagonists from past Predator films are all in cryogenic stasis, so there's a chance they can come back. And then in this one, after the main action, we also get kind of a tease. And it's a question of, is he putting this shit in just to kind of give us that nothing is ever really safe? That you never really defeat the Predator, you never really escape, that it's always going to come back and something is always going to ruin what might be otherwise considered a happy ending? Or is there a long-term plan of where he wants these projects to go? Are we going to get a thing where all of these storylines coalesce and join together? I said it at the end of the Killer of Killers review, I'd love to see another animated film where Dutch and Danny Glover and Amber Midthunder all are there and all are interacting. I'd love to see that. Anyway, but I don't really have a lot else to say about this movie because it's just a solid film. There's not much really to critique. There's not much really to pull apart. The special effects are phenomenal. I think the story is great. I can understand why some people are going to have a hard time getting into it. Like I say, I had a little bit of hard time with the Predator having an adorable animal sidekick, but then realizing that it's part of a larger thematic element that will pay off and come back later. So in retrospect, I don't mind it. I know I did have a hard time with it as it was happening, but I kept going, okay. And then when you realize what it is, you're like, okay, I gotcha. But yeah, it was a good, solid action film, a fun adventure. You know, I don't know if you could ask for anything more than that. I guess that is, if that could be the complaint, I guess that would probably be it, is I don't think it's anything more than that, which it doesn't have to be, but I really feel Prey elevated this franchise in stature. And then Killer of Killers followed that up and was phenomenal. I don't think it was as good as Prey, but it was still pretty fucking awesome. And this one is just awesome. I wouldn't say it's totally fucking awesome, but it is awesome. So, if the worst thing I can say about it is that it's not on the level of its predecessors, but is still a fun time and is still light years better than anything they put out with the Predator from the end of Predator 2 all the way up to Prey, then that's still a pretty high recommendation for this one. So yeah, I recommend going and seeing this one. Do like I do. Go have a guys' night with your buddy and have a great time watching just a fucking awesome, or an awesome, I should say, space action movie. It's a good time. So yeah, I don't know what else to really get into on this. I'm excited to see what Dan Trachtenberg does next with the franchise. Anyway, so those are my thoughts. And yeah, let's wrap this up. So final grade for Predator Badlands, I'm giving it a B+. And it's not out of the A contention for any real reason other than it's nothing really spectacular. It's good, it's solid, it's fun, it's original. It didn't leave me with that same feeling of, oh my fucking God, like, the other ones did. But it is still a great movie. I'll watch it again. It'll be part of my rotation. So yeah, I recommend it. Go check it out. Okay. So there you have it. So let's wrap this up. So thanks for coming along. Thanks for listening. Thanks for coming with me. And as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.